This video was made in collaboration with Mr. B. More information at the end of the video. So, you are a country, and you have taken note of the European Union and its 28 member nations, and all the nice things going on there, well, with their multinational currency and open borders and all that, and you decide you want to be a part of it too. So, what do? Okay, so your government and people have democratically decided that it would be in your best interest to join the European Union. But first, we must ask, who can join the EU? Well, for a European Union, it's no surprise that the preference might be given to European countries, so an independent Cascadia might have to try other alliances. Morocco was even refused entry in 1987 for this reason. However, there have been, and still are, quite a few areas outside of Europe that have been part of the EU, well, besides Cyprus. This is because, from the 1500s all the way up to the age of the internet, Western European countries have established huge colonial empires across the world. France got half of Africa, Germany got Namibia, Italy got Albania, Serbia got nothing, Portugal got Brazil, Spain got America, Britain got everything, Norway got everywhere no one can live, and Russia got everywhere that looks like this. In more recent times, this has happened with Greenland through Denmark, and Algeria through France, and is still true to this day with Saint Martin, French Guiana, and Mayotte through France, the Canary Islands through Spain, the Faroe Islands through Denmark, the Madeira Islands and the Azores through Portugal, and way too many others to mention through the UK. Okay, but let's say your country is fully in Europe as disputed by no one. What are the social requirements? You don't just run a successful popular referendum and waltz into the European Commission saying, I'd like to join. The main requirements for joining the EU, known as the Copenhagen criteria, are 1. Stable institutions to guarantee democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and respect for and protection of minorities. 2. A functioning market economy and the capacity to cope with competition and market forces in the EU. And 3. The ability to take on and implement effectively the obligations of membership, including adherence to the aims of political, economic, and monetary union. Okay, that was quite a mouthful, so let's break that all down. The first rule is pretty easy to understand. Ensure democracy and human rights for civilians. Easy to understand, but not often pulled off in many countries. Second are the economic factors, in that the EU is most strongly centered around the economy. Even if joining the EU would be a godsend to your economy, it must be abundantly clear that your economy will not be a burden on the EU's larger members. Finally, the third rule is to make sure your country can actually be a successful member of the EU. What with its open visa policies and single currency and all that. Basically, you must be able to do what EU nations actually do. As in order to be a member of the EU, you must be, a member of the EU. There are some exceptions to some of these rules though, most famously with Britain's opt-outs for the Eurozone and Schengen. These just require opt-out treaties upon entry. Of course, if you don't want open visa policies and all that, the EU probably isn't for you. Part of what takes the process so long, though, is that the applicant country has to enact many of the EU laws that will eventually apply to it, which itself can take quite a bit. So, which countries are currently trying to join the EU? These countries are called candidate countries for obvious reasons, and include Albania, Montenegro, Serbia, Macedonia, yes I know, and with probably the most notable being Turkey. There are also 2 potential candidates, being Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo, yes I know, both complete with adorable EU-inspired flags. 3 of them, Serbia, Montenegro, and Turkey, are currently negotiating, though Turkey has unfortunately been on hold after the 2016 coup attempt. Serbia and Montenegro, however, though now referring to 2 separate countries, are expected to be able to join somewhere between 2019 and 2025. During the negotiation period, the candidate countries and the European Commission must come to a firm agreement on the Acquis Communautaire, which is basically a law book on how to Europe. It is divided into more than 30 chapters, which are agreed upon often one by one, and agreements can take a while. Montenegro has finished 3 of the chapters, Serbia has finished 2, and Turkey has only finished 1. Wait, but what about all the independence movements, like in Scotland, Catalonia, and Flanders? Well, that is a rather iffy issue, as it is still yet to happen, where a country is formed through independence from an EU country. Basically, it looks like something that will have to be looked at when it happens. Anti-independence politicians say that new countries will have to reapply, whereas pro-independence politicians disagree, and insist that their countries can still be a part of the EU, all to the surprise of absolutely no one. However, once you've been approved by the European Commission to start negotiations, and you've been screened for entry, and have reached an agreement on all 30+ chapters of the Acquis, and you've enacted all the pre-accession period laws and regulations required for entry, then congratulations! Your nation is now officially part of the European Union. Hope you enjoy your open visa policies, and hope you're not Britain. Okay, so maybe the EU isn't really something for you. Say you're in North America or Oceania. If you want to become a US state instead, go check out Mr. Beat's video on much the same idea as this video, but for becoming the 51st, or hopefully 53rd, state of our country. But while you're at it, please also subscribe to this channel so you can learn something new every Sunday.
Obviously here somewhere, but much like the European continent itself, which has an unclear boundary, the European Union also has some fuzzy edges to it. To start, the official members of the European Union are, in decreasing order of population, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, Poland, Romania, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Greece, Belgium, Portugal, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Sweden, Austria, Bulgaria, Denmark, Slovakia, Finland, Ireland, Croatia, Lithuania, Latvia, Slovenia, Estonia, Cyprus, Luxembourg, and Malta. The edges of the EU will probably continue to expand further out as there are other countries in various stages of trying to become a member. How the EU works is hideously complicated and a story for another time, but for this video you need know only 3 things. First, countries pay membership dues, and second, vote on the laws they all must follow, and third, citizens of member countries are automatically European Union citizens as well. This last means that if you're a citizen of any of these countries, you are free to live and work and retire in any of the others, which is nice, especially if you think your country is too big or too small or too hot or too cold. The European Union gives you options. By the way, did you notice how all 3 of these statements have asterisks attached to this unhelpful footnote? Well, get used to it. Europe loves asterisks that add exceptions to complicated agreements. These 3, for example, point us towards the first bit of border fuzziness with Norway, Iceland, and Little Liechtenstein, none of which are in the European Union, but if you're an EU citizen, you can live in these countries, and Norwegians, Icelanders, or Liechtensteiners can live in yours. Why? In exchange for freedom of movement of people, they have to pay membership fees to the European Union, even though they aren't a part of it, and thus don't get a say in its laws that they still have to follow. This arrangement is the European Economic Area, and it sounds like a terrible deal were it not for that asterisk which grants EEA, but not EU members, a pass on some areas of law, notably farming and fishing, something a country like, say, Iceland might care quite a lot about running themselves. Between the European Union and the European Economic Area, the continent looks mostly covered, with the notable exception of Switzerland, who remains neutral and fiercely independent, except for her participation in the Schengen area. If you're from a country that keeps her borders extremely clean and or well patrolled, the Schengen area is a bit mind-blowing because it's an agreement between countries to take a meh approach to borders. In the Schengen area, international boundaries look like this. No border officers or passport checks of any kind. You can walk from Lisbon to Tallinn without identification or the need to answer the question business or pleasure. For Switzerland, being part of Schengen but not part of the European Union means that non-Swiss can check in any time they like, but they can never stay. This kumbaya approach to borders isn't appreciated by everyone in the EU, most loudly the United Kingdom and Ireland, who argue that islands are different. Thus, to get onto these fair isles, you'll need a passport and a good reason. Britannia's reluctance to get fully involved with the EU brings us to the next topic, money. The European Union has its own fancy currency, the euro, used by the majority but not all of the European Union members. This economic union is called the Eurozone, and to join, a country must first reach certain financial goals, and lying about reaching those goals is certainly not something anyone would do. Most of the non-Eurozone members, when they meet the goals, will ditch their local currency in favor of the euro, but 3 of them, Denmark, Sweden, and of course the United Kingdom, have asterisks attached to the euro section of the treaty, giving them a permanent opt-out. And weirdly, 4 tiny European countries, Andorra, San Marino, Monaco, and Vatican City, have an asterisk giving them the exact reverse, the right to print and use euros as their money despite not being in the European Union at all. So that's the big picture. There's the EU, which makes all the rules, the Eurozone inside of it with a common currency, the European Economic Area outside of it where people can move freely, and the selective Schengen for countries that think borders just aren't worth the hassle. As you can see, there's some strange overlap with these borders, but we're not done talking about complications by a long shot, once again, because empire. So Portugal and Spain have islands from their colonial days that they've never parted with. These are the Madeira and Canary Islands off the coast of Africa and the Azores well into the Atlantic. Because these islands are Spanish and Portuguese, they're part of the European Union as well. Adding a few islands to the EU's borders isn't a big deal until you consider France, the queen of not letting go. She still holds on to a bunch of islands in the Caribbean, Reunion off the coast of Madagascar, and French Guiana in South America. As far as France is concerned, these are France too, which single-handedly extends the edge-to-edge distance of the European Union across a third of the Earth's circumference. Collectively, these bits of France, Spain, and Portugal are called the outermost regions, and they're the result of the simple answer to empire: just keep it. On the other hand, there's the United Kingdom, the master of maintaining complicated relationships with her quasi-former lands, and she's by no means alone in this on such an empire-happy continent. The Netherlands and Denmark and France, again, all have what the European Union calls overseas territories. They're not part of the European Union, instead they're a bottomless well of asterisks due to their complicated relationships with both the European Union and their associated countries, which makes it hard to say anything meaningful about them as a group, but in general, European Union law doesn't apply to these places, though in general, the people who live there are European Union citizens because in general, they have the citizenship of their associated country, so in general, they can live anywhere in the EU they want, but in general, other European Union citizens can't freely move to these territories, which makes these places a weird, semi-permeable membrane of the European Union proper, and the final part we're going to talk about in detail, even though there are still many more one-off asterisks you might stumble upon, such as the Isle of Man, or those Spanish cities in North Africa, or Gibraltar, who pretends to be part of southwest England sometimes, or that region in Greece where it's totally legal to ban women, or Saba and friends who are part of the Netherlands and so should be part of the EU but aren't, or the Faroe Islands upon which while citizens of Denmark live they lose their EU citizenship, and on it goes. These asterisks almost never end, but this video must.